Hey everybody, this is Joel. I'm down at Boom Comics in Topeka. We got kind of a quiet Sunday evening going on down here, and I'm here to talk about corporations in the Dryden universe. This video is a specific response to questions that I got from Nick at Owlman Press. For those of you who don't know, Owlman owns Big Damn Sci-Fi, which is a science fiction role-playing game, and they're adapting that role-playing game to the Dryden universe in a version called Big Damn Dryden. And Nick wrote me and asked me some questions about corporations, and in the Dryden universe, and Nick, I discovered that I had thousands and thousands of words of material on corporations, and I thought the best way to get them to you would be just to record you a quick video. If you have specific questions that you'd like to bring back to me, or things you'd like me to write up in a list for you, that's fine. For those of you who aren't Nick, this is a good introduction to the way the corporate environment works in the year 2503 in the Primer, which is the first of our 4 eras in time. So the first thing that we need to understand about the way corporations work is that we took a look at the way corporations function really throughout human history. You know, if you want to talk about the East India Trade Company, or you want to talk about big multinationals today, a lot of what we do and how we do things is shaped by the companies that make goods available to us, and we have labor being done thousands of miles away to bring us products because it's more expensive to have the product made here, etc., etc., etc. All the things that you learned about the way corporations work in your Business 101 course, and we wanted to reflect that in the Primer because the Primer is very similar to our universe, our world, in terms of behavior. So we're just sort of taking our universe, or our world today here on Earth, and expanding it out into the local area in the Milky Way. So the idea is that there are entities out there. There are plenty of entities out there that are not business entities, that are pure exploration entities, that are human whale, cybernetic integrated entities. But there are a lot of corporations, and they control a lot of how business is done locally. So we've had quite a bit of work by John Berg and Dan Hunt talking about corporations, and by me talking about corporations, and so I've now wasted 2 minutes and 30 seconds telling you that that's what I'm going to talk about today. All right. So corporations don't own everything. There are a lot of independent planets out there. There are a lot of very small corporations that sort of survive on the side. There are a lot of subsidiary corporations that live underneath larger corporations in our universe. But I'm going to talk about 3 that are the biggest of the corporations, and where they came from and how they behave. So the very first one, I'm actually going to work from, if you look at our universe, I'm going to start away from Galactic Center. I'm going to move towards Earth, and then I'm going to move on towards Galactic Center, remembering that we actually kind of move sideways across the universe. So coming back this way, farthest out from Galactic Center of the 3 big corporations is the Lin Corporation. The Lin Corporation is actually also the oldest corporation. It tracks its history directly to the first permanent moon colony, which was put on the moon by China in our universe. And it is very old now. It's 300 and some years old, and very sort of venerable. And there are a couple of things that I wanted to try to capture with Lin Corporation. One of the things that I've really liked for a long time about the history of China is that they had an educated bureaucratic middle class for a long time. Whereas in most feudal societies, either you were a part of the feudal hierarchy or you weren't. There was the ability in China for hundreds of years to get some education and get into this sort of bureaucratic class. There were a lot of different administrative functions that needed to be done, and you needed educated people. And education has been available, and the ability to move yourself sort of regardless of your birth station in China for a lot longer than it has in a lot of the rest of the world. And I really admire that, and I think that's very cool. I'm kind of a self-starter kind of guy myself, and I like the idea that with a little bit of discipline and a little bit of initiative, you could find your way above your station in Chinese history. And that's sort of, I intend for that to sort of be reflected in the way LinCorp works. They are a company that likes discipline, that likes things to be orderly. And if you're not doing well in their organization, the sort of feeling is that you are not applying yourself. You're not doing your function correctly, that discipline and hard work can move you up. In that regard, there are a lot less class sort of striations in their organization than you would find in others, but at the same time, very much a right and a wrong way to do things. The next corporation, then the one that's actually around Sol itself and into the star systems around Sol, is TerraCorp. And most of the work that's been done on TerraCorp has been done by Dan Hunt in Songs from Distant Stars, and then in The Eclipsing of Cyrus B, he's also working with TerraCorp, and I think wants to continue to develop TerraCorp. So as those materials become available, we'll learn a lot more about how TerraCorp behaves. TerraCorp is maybe the great-grandchild of the last governments of Earth. As Earth was sort of unified, there was a period, and it's described in the history on the Facebook Authors and Artists page, where there was quite a bit of battle for the control of the solar system. There were some small wars and battles that went on, and TerraCorp was the winner. Everybody else had to leave the solar system. And the thing that has really been their hallmark as they've been developed is that they own the Geist Marines, which are the very high class, absolutely most augmented, most enhanced fighters in the galaxy. And the very best, and they run a fabulous Navy as well. There's a lot of work that's been done on the TerraCorp Navy, and it's extensive and it's very big, and it resembles the U.S. Navy from World War II in terms of structure and organization. The other thing that's sort of notable about TerraCorp is that they have run into an alien species. It's not very well known or understood, but it lives off in the positive 90 near the plane of the ecliptic of the galaxy. At some distance, 300 or 400 light years out there, they've started encountering an alien species, and so that has cropped up. Joel Bewley did a really wonderful poster that I believe is out on the Facebook page. It's the Know Your Enemy poster. That's directly from Dan's work, and is that alien species that they've encountered. The third corporation, that's the really big one, is also the youngest. They formed on a planet called Papin's World just within the last century or so, which is towards Galactic Center and off to the left a little bit of Sol. And they're called SyrCorp, S-Y-R-C-H Corp. And most of the work that's been done here has been done by John Berg and Turning Point and some of the other work that he's done. And these guys are the biggest, nastiest, slimy box store owning corporation, anything for $1 that you're likely to meet. They are very, very profit driven. They're very little interest in the people. They're very little interest in environmental concerns or anything like that. They are big money, and they're sort of noted for the size of the operations. They build the biggest spaceships that exist in space, and although it's not well known around the galaxy, they are working on a Ringworld project and eventually plan to move their base of operations to a Ringworld. That's a 100-year project, 200-year project, though, so it's nothing that's going to come to fruition anytime soon. It might be an exciting corner of the universe for somebody to explore. Ringworlds are a really interesting concept. I'm glad we have one in our universe. The thing that Berg said about SyrCorp that I thought was very interesting, he said a couple of things that were very interesting. He said that you have problems on SyrCorp planets with things like their security has no weapons that are any advanced tech because security doesn't make money, and so you fund it to very minimal that you can. They have the same problems that occasionally biodomes fail or major pieces of equipment fail because they are so profit driven that occasionally they're self-defeating. The other thing that he said is that there is an almost feudal hierarchy. There are important bigwig corporate people who would never be found on a planet's surface, or at least not on a resource planet. And then you've got people who are living in a very subsistence sort of lifestyle, operating mining equipment and doing other dirty work for the corporation. And they are the most indentured, least represented people in this system. So that's or in the galaxy, and that's the three sort of major corporations. Now there are some considerations. Nick asked me about who makes what, for example, what different folks make. Well, the issue that we've run into, Nick, is that by the time that you're controlling multiple planets, you need to do an awful lot of different types of manufacturing all by yourself. I'll give you an example. If we had one corporation that did all of the manufacture of interstellar spaceships, pretty soon there'd only be one corporation, because nobody else would be able to get interstellar spaceships. You just wouldn't make them available to folks. And so things like biodomes, terraforming equipment, interstellar spaceships, heavy lifting equipment to get things off of planet, everybody that owns a corporation makes those, okay? And I think that the way that the corporations sort of distinguish themselves is by the values that they have. You know, are we a corporation that's very interested in our people? Are we a corporation that's very interested in our profits? Are we the least bit aware of the destruction that we're doing to planets? TerraCore in particular will, or not TerraCore, but CertCorp in particular will go into an uninhabited planet that's got a lot of resources on it, and it's described as a 300-year resource retrieval process. They just go in and strip the planet. It's wholesale. And other folks, LinCorp or TerraCorp, for example, would be more interested in, are there alien species on that planet? Is there something that needs to be protected on that planet? The other thing that I failed to mention about CertCorp earlier is that they are developing in the general direction that the Cetaceans left in, Il Soltaire left in, and Il Soltaire appeared around League Prime, which I'm going to talk about, the League of Planets here in a minute, some years in the past, and announced a whole lot of star systems that were off limits to human research. And any ship that goes into those star systems just vanishes. It's never heard from again. No communication ponies come back, no debris, no reports of combat, anything. The ships just disappear, and nobody really knows how much trouble CertCorp is having with Il Soltaire and what the nature of that relationship is like. That's something that I would like to see explored. I've sort of intentionally put the very garbageous corporation up against the very coolest alien species, and I'm excited for somebody to develop that. All right, so having said that, I want to talk having talked about the corporations, I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the environment that's around them. Corporations can and do completely take over planets. Occasionally it's violent. Occasionally it's business. You know, dollars change hands and somebody else owns it. But there are enough independent planets out there, and there are enough shared interests across the star systems that there is a form of government that is meant to be larger than the corporations, and it's called the League of Planets. There was a planet that's in TerraCore space, almost all the way back out to Lynn space, named Parmer, that was in danger of being taken over by TerraCorp. And rather than allow that to happen, they offered their planet to the League of Planets as a home base. And it's very much a kind of a UN sort of operation. The League of Planets represents the shared interests of humanity across space. The Interspecies Defense Fund is very close to them for a while, although that relationship can be a little bit rocky. They're interested in the protection of human rights across the star systems, and tend to get in arguments with corporations about how things should be done and what access to rights folks should have. And they are in no way capable of standing directly up to a major corporation. If it came to open warfare, the League of Planets would die. But that never happens because there are enough independent planets out there, and there is enough sort of shared interest out there that a corporation could never really act directly against the League of Planets. So it's always very fractious, and it's always very difficult, and you'll find the League of Planets with armed peacekeepers around planets that corporations are interested in that don't want to be taken over. There's another planet that exists out there. It's behind Earth, kind of off this direction, so maybe a positive 70 or 80, maybe 100 degrees in the X radius, called Sufin. And Sufin is an interesting planet because it's a relatively high-density planet. It has well over 1 G of gravity, and the people that have lived there for the past 150 years or so have started developing these sort of short and stocky builds. They're sort of recognizable around space. If you see a Sufinite, you're likely to know that it's a Sufinite. And for reasons that have never really been explored explored. I'd love to see somebody explore them. Sufin is fiercely independent. They own their planet. Nobody else owns their planet. They're a democratic planet. They believe in democracy. They support democracy, and they're very, very closely aligned with the League of Planets. But due to the way that they work, they tend to be agitators and instigators. You will find Sufinites sneaking onto corporate planets and raising hell and trying to foment revolution and trying to educate the people. And that's really very possible and very interesting, because if you think about, you know, a corporation that goes into a planet that has no people on it, it's a totally barren rock, and sets up a biodome and populates that planet, you can tell those people anything you want to. Our corporation is the best corporation. We're the only habitable population in space. Nobody on a corporate planet is likely to know who's actually running. At least one of the low-end planets that's just sort of there for resource retrieval is likely to know anything about what's going on. The corporation controls all the education, and so the Sufin or other folks like them come in and are educators and agitators and troublemakers. And we've had some very enjoyable stories come out of that. All right, so that is sort of a quick look at what the corporations look like in the year 2503. I hope, Nick, that I've answered your questions. If I haven't, please send me a note. And then, of course, if you'd like some of this written down, I had more than I could ever write, so I thought I'd just lay it on you and let you ask me for what you want. Anybody else who's interested in developing some stories in these corporations or around space in the Dryden experiment, please give me a ring. The best place to get a hold of me is either through the author and artist page out on Facebook, or at our email account, which is drydenexperiment@yahoo.com. That's DrydenExperiment @yahoo.com. And this is Boom Comics. Thank you very much.